Minister Blair, thank you for making the time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
I want to start with news this Friday that Alexei Navalny is dead, according to Russian authorities. His wife is at the same conference as you in Munich and spoke this morning saying that Putin and his circle will be brought to justice. Given what a fierce critic Navalny was of President Putin's, what message does this send about Putin and Russia's place in the world right now?
Well, much of the focus on this conference is on the war in Ukraine and Putin's unlawful invasion of that country. Mrs. Navalny is here at this conference. She spoke to the participants after word of her husband's death became public, and it was very emotional. I think for many of the people here at the conference, it really does speak to the oppressive nature of the Putin regime, and frankly, it highlights for many of us here at the conference part of what we are working towards when we are in support of Ukraine in their efforts to defeat the invasion of their country.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you've been doing over the past couple of days. As you say, a lot of it focused on the NATO response to Russia. I want to start with Latvia. Canada's committed to doubling the military presence in Latvia to 2,200, I guess. I wonder if that is going to be challenging to meet the goal, given that Canadian Armed Forces are strapped for resources, or do you believe that you can still meet that target?
We've made a commitment to our NATO allies and to Latvia. We're working with a number of international partners, but by 2026, we will. I have about a little over 1,000 Canadian Armed Forces members currently deployed into Latvia.
Yeah.
We're going to be ramping that up to brigade strength. Part of what we announced this week is we've also been doing a lot of work with our allies, but Canada has been doing what is required to make sure that our deployment in Latvia has the tools that they need to remain safe. And for example, we are investing in a new aircraft missile system for them. We've already purchased anti-tank weapons, and we're making some investments so that they can defend themselves against drones, which have become a very significant battlefield innovation that we've been dealing with. And so I'm confident, Rosie, that we're going to be able to live up to our obligations. I've also been meeting with a number of our NATO counterparts, many of whom are participating. Sweden, for example, who is about to become, I'm hopeful, a member of NATO, has already committed to provide a battalion to our deployment in Latvia. There are a number of other countries, 10 in total, that are also contributing troops. We're doing what is necessary, working with the Latvians to make sure the infrastructure, the camps, the training areas, and the equipment that is needed in order for them to perform that mission is going to be there and available for them when we reach that staffing level in 2026.
Okay, let me ask you about, you talked about what you did for Latvia there, but the Canadian government has also promised that air defense system to Ukraine. It's almost a year ago that promise was made. The last update I heard was that it was still in development with the U.S. Can you tell me the status of this, Minister? Because I think it is perhaps frustrating for Ukrainians to have a promise and not have anything yet.
Can I tell you, a little frustrating for us too, Rosie. But we've already provided Ukraine with a number of rockets, including the SAM rockets. It's a NASAM system that we committed to provide to Ukraine. We felt the fastest way for us to acquire it from the manufacturer is working in concert with the U.S. government. We've been working very closely with them. We've actually delivered almost a year ago now, $400 million to the U.S. government to facilitate that contract. There have been some challenges that the Americans have experienced. Ambassador Cohen, our ambassador, the U.S.'s ambassador to Canada, has been very, very helpful in expediting that. And we are working with the Ukrainians and with the Americans to get them that rocket system as quickly as possible. As I said, we've already sent them a significant number of NASAM missiles that Canada had in its inventory. The new missile system is really important, and we're working as fast as we can to get it delivered to Ukraine.
Okay. I imagine at the conference where you are, Minister, there are conversations about the aid package from the U.S. for Ukraine that is again stalled, and questions about whether there is any way to make up that gap, or if the U.S. is sending a message that they will get it to Ukraine. What kind of pressure are you putting on the U.S., or others putting on the U.S. to try and get that moving, even though it's stuck for political domestic reasons? How concerned are you about that?
Well, I just came from 2 days of NATO meetings before I came here to the security conference in Munich, and it was a very important part of the discussion. First of all, Rosie, let me acknowledge the Americans have been incredible leaders and strong supporters of Ukraine. They have been generous supporters and continue to be. There is obviously a political activity taking place in the U.S. right now, but there was a strong discussion among all NATO members that we all have to step up and we all have to do more. And what we are seeing among the other NATO members is a very concerted effort to increase production of munitions and to expedite and move more quickly. It's one of the reasons, for example, when I came to the NATO meetings in Brussels, we announced that we're putting additional $60 million into the F-16 coalition. I can assure you, all NATO members, first of all, we rely and we trust that the Americans will be there because they've always been there. They have a remarkable record of leadership. But all of the NATO members, I think, share the commitment that we all need to do more. And we had an excellent briefing from Rustem Umerov, the defense minister from Ukraine. Actually, President Zelensky's here at the conference that I'm attending in Munich. I think my experience is certainly among our NATO allies and resolutely from the United States, support for the Ukraine, it remains steadfast. We're very confident the Americans are going to get through that political process as quickly as possible. And in the interim, the rest of us are all stepping up to make sure that we fill the breach.
You might feel that now under the current administration, but as you know, there is an election campaign already underway, and Donald Trump is again saying, criticizing NATO and saying that he won't back NATO countries who don't meet their spending target. That would include Canada. He actually also last week suggested that Russia should go ahead and attack those countries because it's not NATO's problem if countries can't pay up. What is your response to that? Because this is, sure, it's political rhetoric, but it's also a man who has expressed these concerns about NATO in the past when he was president, and it could create real problems for Canada and others.
No, and Rosie, I believe it is largely rhetorical, but at the same time, since the invasion of Ukraine 2 years ago, I think Putin's intention was actually to challenge NATO and the alliance, and it's had exactly the opposite effect. And I'm also confident that if former President Trump had an opportunity to understand how NATO has really galvanized and been energized by its support for Ukraine, it's brought the alliance much stronger together. There is I think a very strong commitment. We're seeing in Canada and in other places a very strong upward trajectory in our defense spending, very smart investments, greater collaboration among all the partners in what we call capability coalitions that have been established to support Ukraine, not only in the immediate battlefield requirements, but in the future to make sure that they have sustainable development that will continue to support their sovereignty. All of that work has taken place, and I certainly witnessed in my brief time as the defense minister a remarkable commitment from all the NATO members, and I think if former President Trump had an opportunity to see that level of commitment, I think he'd be much more confident in the NATO alliance.
Okay, Minister. Well, you're an optimist on that front. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, sir.
Okay. Thanks very much, Rosie.